Hello. We are here with a special live panel of experts who are going to help you to burn your help wanted sign and get you moving from the great resignation to the great retention. I am the facilitator for this live panel. I'm Charlene Tessier. And if you have any comments or questions, drop them in and we will try to get to them as well. But we have great questions already lined up for you with these four experts. I'm going to start off by introducing each one so that you know exactly who they are. And if you can actually maybe wave or say hello, then we'll know exactly who you are when I introduce you. Starting with Kelley Ashby. She provides training, coaching, and consulting services focused on helping individuals, teams, and organizations enhance work and leadership skills essential for success in today's workplace. Areas of expertise include emotional intelligence, intergenerational workforces, leadership, employee development, and more. Hello, Ashley. And now we have also Stacie Riffert. She is a Focal Point certified business and executive coach, licensed facilitator, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner with TTISI. She helps small business owners with kids at home to lose the guilt, stop the overwhelm, and build businesses that they are proud of. Hello, Stacie. And we have Hayley Studer, who has over 20 years of experience in healthcare finance, where she has gained an understanding of the complexity of the healthcare reimbursement systems. She is now head of her own business, Aki, which integrates her diverse background to not only change lives, but transform our health payment models. Hello, Hayley. And last but of course not least is Scott Couchenour, I hope I got it right, is an executive coach to founders with audacious problems to solve our goals to achieve. Based on his decades of experience in family business and coaching businesses, he helps his clients identify the problem or goal, design a plan forward, and execute effectively for even greater transformation. And we're going to be with you for the next 45 minutes or so. And if you have questions, just let us know in the comments. We're going to start out, though, first with a really big question everybody's been asking is, why is retention so vital right now? And we've all heard of the Great Resignation. So why are so many workers around the world currently quitting their jobs? Stacie, would you like to?
Sure. That's the $1 million question right now, right? I think between people sheltering at home, being in quarantine, seeing illness, seeing death over the last 2 years, people are really reevaluating what's important to them. Right? They want to feel valued. They want to be working in places that see them and see their contributions as important. And a lot of people are experiencing burnout. And so I think this combination of this reevaluation, along with feeling burnt out and not valued, it's making people leave, right? It's making you say, maybe I don't need to work in person. Maybe I'm being paid too little. Maybe I don't have the flexibility in hours or location that I need in order to be able to still do the things that matter to me. And we saw this happen with women in particular. They left in huge waves, 2 times the rate of men, as demands for childcare increased, as they had to homeschool kids over the last year. And they often are the ones that are caring for the people who are ill around them. And so we thought that this would change a little bit as kids started going back to school this year. But actually in September, we had almost 200,000 positions filled by men, but 300,000 women still left the workforce. And so we're seeing an even bigger disparity when we look at men versus women leaving the workforce.
Wow. Hayley, would you like to also chime in?
Yeah, just to add to that, thank you, Stacie. Piggybacking on what Stacie said, I think there are a lot more options out there now, and we've started to realize that through the pandemic, that not only from a personal standpoint that we have options and we can reevaluate our priorities, but there are more options in the workplace and more work from home jobs, more jobs with flexibility. And when we just look at the numbers kind of pre and post pandemic, looking at over 4 million people every month now leaving the workforce. Those are huge numbers, and they've been increasing in August and September, with 10 million job openings out there. That is a lot of different opportunities for people to choose to do something different. As Stacie said, as they've been able to look at what's really important to them when they've been home and they have different demands, maybe need more flexibility. Looking at there are options out there that they have now that they didn't have before. And so being able to just take inventory of what they really want to do and where they can maybe go that they couldn't have previously really can open up a lot of doors and create a lot of issues and challenges for companies now.
I think it's important for us to note too, as we're thinking about where people are leaving, there's a couple of industries that are being hit the hardest with this. And they tend to be the ones that have more hourly employees, that require in-person work, right? That don't necessarily have that level of flexibility to work from home. So things like manufacturing, healthcare, retail, restaurants, hospitality in general, those are the places that we're seeing the greatest migration out. And people are actually leaving those jobs and they're going to different industries. And that gets back to that choice that Hayley was just talking about. 28% of people who have left those industries have just quit without another job being lined up before they left.
Also, why is retention so vital now is because if that trend continues, what are we going to do with the healthcare system, with the restaurant, hospitality industry has really changed, and it's just so common now to order ahead and have something delivered, or just drive up and they bring it out. Groceries, same thing. So as a business owner, that means cost. When I lose somebody, that means everyone else has to pick up the slack, or I need to spend the time looking for a replacement, and that cost in time and lost opportunity is vital.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, the one thing that in my research that I found is that oftentimes the employers think it's all about pay, that we need to pay people more in order to keep them, and ironically employees are saying, hey, it's the human aspect. It's I want to feel valued. I want to feel appreciated, like Stacie was saying earlier. So there's this transactional kind of reaction from the employer side as far as, I just need to pay my people more, which granted, yes, we need to be making sure that we're paying our team, a livable wage. But we also need to take a look at that human component. How are people feeling when they're working in my organization and in my company? Is there something going on within the culture that is causing people to jump ship? Because sometimes people are jumping ship for less pay because there's a better, more flexible, more autonomy over time, more control over when I'm on and when I'm off. And given the current situation with needing to provide childcare or care for somebody who's ill, that flexibility is really a high priority.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. And that segues perfectly into how you can be managing your current talent. Mm-hmm. A good way to not need your help wanted sign is to keep the people you have, just like you were talking about. So what are employees in the post-pandemic world looking for from their employers? Kelley, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, sure. So not only, are we shocked by the number of people that are leaving, I think we also, especially as people or companies that are employing others, we need to be paying attention to the folks that are still with us. And one article that I found when I was doing the research for this particular panel talked about the people that are left in the workforce really being the working dead, that 1 in 3 people that are still working are feeling hopeless and aimless and really have lost their spirit. And so again, it comes back to what our companies and organizations doing to address that human component. What are we doing to make sure that people are feeling valued and appreciated? and showing empathy to their outside of work situations. If somebody needs, in fact, I was just coaching one of my clients yesterday, and she's relocated, she's looking for a new job, and she has a 3-year-old whose daycare somebody came down with COVID. And so right away, she needed to be available for 2 weeks to keep an eye on and care for her son. Well, that definitely impacts our working world and our employees differently than it did pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That human element is so crucial, right? And so as you think about that retention, right, and even in the attraction of new employees, traditional offices, traditional work weeks, traditional work hours, even our traditional management styles, they need to change. Our employees are starting to demand that. And what they are after is really about organizations that care for the people as people, that they don't feel like they're a number, right? That they are thinking about how they can progress their career, how they can have meaningful and fulfilling work. That has been a really big thing that I'm seeing as part of this now too. That people want work that they feel gives them a sense of purpose and belonging, and where they can feel that there's this sense of balance for themselves as a result of that. And they're starting to demand those workplaces where they feel connection and they're paid fairly and they feel really good about the work that they're doing. So as you look at the culture of your organization and how your leaders are caring for their people, how they're really stopping to listen and to take note of the things that matter for their employees, those are the ones that are going to be more successful as we continue to move forward.
Absolutely.
I think one of the other areas kind of going along with that human culture piece of it and understanding what your employees want, it is a great opportunity for companies to take a look at those unnecessary tasks and where do you have waste within your processes. Those are little things that become tangible. They add up to dollars and cents every day on kind of wasted time and non-productive time, but also can sometimes be those jobs and maybe menial things that your employees hate doing every day. And with a shortage of employees and being short-staffed and teams having to take on more, it's a great time to just take a step back as a leader and really look at, does this task need to be done? Is it adding value to the day? Is it adding value to our customers? Is it adding value to our employees? Or should we take a different approach to this? A perfect time to get creative and look at options that maybe weren't on the table before that now are. I look at some of the areas that I've dealt with before in call centers and in healthcare and billing entities where we could not figure out for years how to send people home and come up with a work from home option that would work and that we could monitor. And literally overnight, 18 months ago, everybody's forced to do it. And all of a sudden, found methods to make it work and found methods to track progress and make sure you could stay in touch with employees and communicate. So things that once seemed difficult or almost impossible now became commonplace. And so really applying that methodology to some of the other problems and just day-to-day processes and tasks really can go a long way in making employees' lives a lot better.
Yeah. We've talked a lot in the last couple of minutes about care and culture and listening to our people. I want to make sure we also point out that this doesn't mean that we're trying to absolve our workers or our employees of their responsibilities or their accountability either, right? It's that balance between having them show up and want to do the good work for you, but also feeling that you are there to help give them the support that they need and to allow them to feel valued. I think empathy is going to be a key leadership quality as we move forward coming out of this pandemic.
Right. And if coming from a highly systemic perspective, both what Hayley and Stacie said, there's a chance for us to reevaluate all of the actions that any business has to take. The businesses are a collection of actions taken by humans, And if we could reevaluate all of those actions in light of the current situation, then we'll know what we need to keep, what we need to end, what we need to change, and what we need to put off for later. You know, uh, and and that way, what we end up with is whatever we keep, that is what our employees need to be responsible for doing. And I love the idea of a result description as opposed to a job description. What are the results for which you are being hired? And then go do that, do the things that get that result.
Right. I would like to add too that another key component to this is re-examining the growth opportunities. So what kind of opportunities exist that allow the talent that you currently have to move up or progress in the organization? And it's not just a vertical climbing the ladder situation anymore. It looks more like a lattice, where it's horizontal and it's, diagonal, and, talent is, your top marketer might become your top salesperson might become your top marketer. And so opening our minds and opening our perspectives to, the one size fits all approach just doesn't seem to have the impact anymore. And this is a really great opportunity to, really ask some critical questions and analyze the evidence that you have that you're making your decisions from. So what's the data? What's the evidence that is behind your retention strategies?
So let's talk a bit more about what's going to make your organization sticky. Related to benefits, what can employers do to address the Great Resignation? And I'll start with Hayley for this one.
Thanks, Charlene. I think one of the things and one of the main things that we can do as leaders is just understand what our employees need. What are the things that are important to them? What are the things that aren't important to them? I think sometimes we can sit in our offices and dream up all of the amazing benefits that we can come up with and perks that we can have for our employees. And we think this is just fabulous and going to be an amazing program. And we take it out to our employees and it's just a dud. And we can understand, why were they not excited about this? This seemed like the best idea ever. And it could have been for us, but didn't address any of their needs whatsoever. So really starting with just assessing our employees' needs. What is important to them and what do they want? What do they need in their lives? Different ways we can do that, either from survey standpoints or just sitting down and rounding with employees is a great way to find out what our employees are struggling with, what's important to them, or having small focus groups and bringing groups of employees together. But understanding those needs, first of all, so that when we're designing our systems and programs and benefits, we're actually doing it with the employee in mind. So that's creating something that is really addressing the needs that they have. And then getting outside of just looking at traditional benefits programs. So it's hard to match up a company and say, okay, we're competitive or we have great employee benefits when you're offering exactly the same thing that every company out there is doing. Your standard medical plans and dental plans, and even taking it to EAP programs, employee assistance programs, and wellness programs. Looking at something that, and when you look at the stats out there are so low on employees that are actually using like EAP programs. Although, and from surveys, employees are saying that mental health challenges tend to be some of the most common things that they're dealing with. So we may have a 50% mental health need with our employee population, and 5% may access our EAP programs on a annual basis. So where is that disconnect between we're offering a program that is meeting our employees' needs, but it isn't if they're not accessing it and they aren't using it. So how do we really get down to the things that are important? I focus a lot on the social determinants of health standpoint. So looking at those other factors like childcare, transportation, access to good food, housing, those types of things that impact our employees' lives every day. What are we doing from an employer standpoint to address those needs? Are we looking at putting programs in place for working moms and someone who has to get their child either on the bus for school or to school in the morning? And it dealt with a situation at a corporation that I worked at previously, where we had someone that was coming into work late every day, and was but only by a couple minutes. So it's not like it was something that was causing a lot of harm or showing up an hour late or whatever the case is, but was in an environment where it had to be ready to work at a certain time. And so just sitting down and talking to the employee and understanding why, what was causing that, and finding out that she had 2 kids that she needed to take to school, was not able to drop them off at school until a certain time, which happened to be 10 minutes before the start of her shift. So she was dropping them off then. That was the earliest that the school opened, and then racing as fast as she could to get to work on a day that she didn't hit any lights and traffic was good. She may make it and squeaking in with 30 seconds to spare, and otherwise she may end up 3 minutes late. And so being able to just work with our employees sometimes on creative solutions as well, being able to look at different options and helping them problem solve and brainstorm, just really getting back to, as Stacie said, that human focus and treating them as human beings, and making sure that they understand that we see them as people. They're our greatest assets from a corporate standpoint. And so making sure that they understand that, and we're willing to look at things that actually will help impact their life and help out from that work-life balance a little bit better.
An organization that is sticky, in my mind, is an organization whose leaders have a tendency to want to be sticky. And what I mean by that is, when we talk about the human factor and being relational more than transactional, think of every employee is a collection of stories. They are going through a story at the moment. And to the extent that we can understand their story, their context, what they're having to deal with in the moment, won't always necessarily be the same story all the time, but you consider the story of each person, and then you look at your processes and procedures and the things you're asking them to do. And where there's great misalignment, maybe there's some things you can shift and still get the objectives that your organization needs to get accomplished, still get those accomplished. And I'm thinking, if I'm racing and hoping that every light goes green, when I finally get into work, I'm going to be stressed. Now, stretch that over months. I mean, that's taking a toll. As a leader of an organization, I've got to be aware that stress is keeping them from doing quality work when they're at the work. So it's one thing to be there. It's another thing to really be there when you're there.
That is a great point. That is so true, Scott. The impact that emotions have on our ability to engage and really be at the top of our game performance-wise is huge. And so shifting from, the tables have shifted from, just do this and kind of a dictatorial approach from leadership to the employees now have a stronger voice and saying, I need this. And most of the time it has to do with empathy and understanding and the human component rather than just being told marching orders. And so if your leaders are not providing that, you know what, your talent is walking. They're going to look somewhere else because of the way that they're treated. And that can't be ignored any longer.
That's a great point, Kelley. And, the research that I've done shows that when you have widespread burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion from your team, it's usually a sign of organizational disarray, not necessarily an employee problem, which is often what we think, right? That they can't handle it or there's other things happening. And, some of the reasons for those are a lot of the things that you guys have already mentioned, right? The job requirements aren't clearly defined. We don't know what success looks like. Maybe we're overloaded with too much work. It could be because we don't have enough people that are working, but we're not receiving things like constructive feedback. We don't have enough autonomy, or we feel this sense of distrust from our leaders. And so all of those things then, become an organizational problem in how we're thinking about our teams, how work gets done, right? And it leads to this feeling or this need for people to leave. They get fed up and they can't handle it any longer.
Thanks. Let's talk a bit more about how we can create an employee experience that wows. What do the employees across various generations want from their workplace experience? Kelley?
Sure. Thanks, Charlene. So one of the things to pay attention to is that people are leaving jobs for the same reason that they've always left jobs: burnout, being mistreated, other opportunities for growth and development. The pandemic has accelerated that. And as you look at generational differences as far as what employees are looking for in the workplace, our younger professionals are looking for those career paths, those ways to progress within an organization. So if you don't have a clearly defined career growth pathway, then that's one of the things that you could take a closer look at and make some shifts and make some changes so that younger professionals can see, okay, if I start here, I can move up the ladder. And I mentioned that the up the ladder is kind of the lattice approach now too. The other piece that I think is really important as far as younger professionals, and when I say younger professionals, I'm talking about millennials, Generation Z. Some of Gen X is also looking for that opportunity to be able to work remotely. Our younger professionals certainly want that ability to work remotely, but they want those growth opportunities. And so if we don't have those opportunities in place, which means do we have training and development programs that can reskill or upskill our current talent, we need to take a closer look at, are we investing in our current talent to provide them those opportunities? And so that's, I think, a shift that the pandemic has presented, employers and CEOs, that we need to take a closer look at what opportunities and training are we providing our current folks. The other piece that one more piece I'll add is the importance of culture. And I know I've said the importance of culture already once, but how do you know if your culture is actually working or if it's causing people to leave? Well, one of the ways that you can look at that is an emotional culture index. Very quick assessment to find out, what is your team currently experiencing and what would they need to experience ideally to be at the top of their game? And if people can perform at the top of their game, they're more engaged and they want to continue with that organization.
Right. That's good stuff. I don't know that I could add.
I think the only thing that I would add to that, Kelley, is just looking also at kind of going back to the personal and the human side of our employees, kind of matching that purpose and what's important to someone from their own work standpoint, their own purpose and kind of passion, and kind of linking that up or connecting that to our employees with our company mission and purpose. And so whether you are in housekeeping or dietary, or you are in administration, whatever piece of the company you're in, knowing how your job and what you do each day fits in with that company culture and that company mission to serve our customers the best way possible, how can you tie that back to what fulfills you on a daily basis? And so sometimes for some people, I think that's just intrinsic and they can do that on their own. And other times it takes someone and a manager and a leader to help bring that out in their team and make sure that it's reinforced and that they understand how what they do each day matters to that overall culture of the company, that overall product or service that we're creating, and make sure that they can see how they fit in that puzzle, and how their voice matters and their piece of what they do matters. And without them, we can't do what we need to do for our ultimate product.
Absolutely. Great addition, Hayley.
Yeah, thanks. Such great insights from everybody. And now to wrap it up, we're going to actually talk a bit more about taking some action, how we can start doing and not only have some talking about it, right? So, how can an organization sustain a great working environment where employees have a great experience and want to stay with the same employer? Scott, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Whenever you're talking about implementation or executing a strategy, the first thing that needs to be in your mind is this is a long game. This is a marathon. This is not the flip of a switch. There's no program that's going to be a magical flip of the switch and then everybody's happy and we're instantly sticky and everyone just instantly says, wow, what a great experience working here, especially if it's not been a wowing experience. And especially if you're not sticky and you're repelling, you're like Teflon. People come to join and work for you. And then after they see what's going on, they take off. It takes time. And if you can get past that hurdle, then it's best to look at it in terms of a cyclical iteration process. And what I mean by that is if you think yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, if you look at that, that's 6 time frames. You have a yearly and quarterly. All right. Those could be led by the upper management. Okay. Say we start an initiative where we're getting everybody's input on benefits and what everybody really needs. Well, it would be the upper management who could take it, here's where we want to be each quarter, and here's where we want to be at the end of the year. That's the yearly and quarterly. Then you have monthly and weekly, and that would be for the middle management. They would be working a little closer with the employees and setting monthly goals that lead to the quarterly goals that lead to the annual goal, and working on a monthly and a weekly basis, because usually if there's a goal in the month that you want to reach as an organization, then you're going to be doing things throughout the week for 4 weeks, or technically 4.2 weeks for those of you who are very detail oriented. You're going to be doing things daily for X number of weeks to reach a monthly that goes to an annual, or a quarterly to an annual. And then the last 2 is daily and hourly, and that's the employees themselves. You don't want a top-down culture push. What you want is your employees to have participation and ownership and be self-motivated. So think of your system for getting this off the ground. It's not a quick fix, and it certainly should not be the flavor of the month. You like a leader who comes back from some retreat or some group meeting and they've got another idea when, everybody just was going in another direction. Now they got to go a different direction and another. That's what you want to avoid. To avoid that, then you allow the change to happen within the hearts of the people on an hourly, daily basis as they perform on a weekly to reach the monthly, and then reach that quarterly and annual, and you start it all over again. I mean, this is not something that you just, like I said, flip a switch and you're done, but it can be rewarding as well.
If I can just add something real quick to that, the stop talking and start doing, I think comes also from what questions you're willing to ask, the hard questions. Are we protecting our toxic leaders? And if so, what's the action that we need to take to either retrain those leaders to not be unhealthy and toxic, or get rid of them and promote or hire somebody new? What are we doing to address the culture? And if it's not, like Scott said, asking everybody to weigh in on that. What are we doing to tap our top talent that currently exists within our organization to make sure that they have the learning and development opportunities to add more skills and, advance on their own career pathway. So asking those hard questions of everybody across the board.
Yeah. If there's one thing that I think someone could do as soon as this segment is over, as soon as this live session is over, is gather all of the job descriptions for every person. If you have them. If you don't, that's another story. But if you have them, analyze this job description and ask yourself, and better yet, have a dialogue with the employee. What is it we're trying to accomplish through this job description? Mm-hmm. See, it's one thing to have a receptionist who has a job description to answer the phones, greet people, keep the coffee machine full and the copier machine full. It's another thing to have them with a result description that says, create a welcoming and productive environment. That's the result. When you go from the result perspective, now you're going to answer the phone differently. You're going to greet people differently. You're going to be motivated to keep the copier and the coffee machine full because there's an end game. There's a reason for it, not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but now you can draw from the people's pride. I can attach myself as with meaning to creating a welcoming and productive environment. It's much, you're going to not be as sticky if you're hiring people just to do a job. And so if you can take the job descriptions and morph them into a result description where the tactics are means to an end, not the end in themselves, people will feel more of a sense of meaning about what they do.
I think
go ahead, Stacie.
I was going to say on that too, I think it empowers our employees to come up with better solutions, right? When we tell them what it is that we want as the result, it lets them come back to us and say, hey, I had a thought about this, right? And it gives them some power, and that is what helps add that value right back into them and gives them some of that purpose as well, that I think people want to do good work, right? They want to do things where they feel like they're showing up and they can bring their best whole true self with them every day. And so by allowing them to be a part of the solution, it's going to also improve that feeling of culture, that feeling of stickiness. And honestly, people are going to work harder for you when they feel that sense of empowerment from you and from your team.
Absolutely. And drilling down even further from the results oriented that Scott was just describing is working with the employee to identify what are the behaviors that align with creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for your front desk receptionist, and brainstorming what are those behaviors that make others, influence others to feel that positive association, so that they're praising your organization as a great place to do business with, but also your employees are praising your organization and your company as a great place to work. And that is the core behind, employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
I love the looking at the end result and keeping that in mind and making sure when we're asking questions or if we're doing a survey or bringing groups of employees together that they do understand that end result. Why is it that we're doing that? What do we want to accomplish? And making sure, as you said, Kelley, asking the hard questions, making sure that if we're going to ask the hard questions, we're going to do something with it. There's nothing worse than sitting in groups with management and going through and talking about whatever. If we want our employees to be vulnerable, talking about culture, what's working, what's not working, how to improve the jobs, what needs they have, really doesn't matter what category. If we're asking the questions, then we have to be prepared as leaders to do something with that. I think that's one of the easiest ways to frustrate a team, is to go through this whole process and have employees feel like their voice is going to be heard, and then not, as Scott said, follow up with that action. So stop talking about it at some point and
Right.
actually start doing something, and let's focus on the things that we really need to address with the employees, not just going back to, again, preconceived notions that and solutions that we thought we were going to put in place before we even asked the questions, but actually doing something with the answers to those questions and modifying the path if need be based on those answers.
As an owner of a business, I would think that if you're really struggling with all this relational stuff, maybe you grew up in the era where it was more of a manufacturing top down, do what I say, or I'll just unplug you and plug someone else in. Think about the bottom line. When you calculate the cost of losing somebody, especially high talent, and looking to replace them in this environment, it's a huge cost. You have to look at the actual cost. You have to look at the liability. If that person leaves and they file a wrongful termination, or they file whatever, bad working conditions, that's a cost. The opportunity cost of you or your managers who have to go sift through Indeed and all these other organizations to bring candidates, only to realize it's a crapshoot whenever you hire anyway. So retention, I would argue, has a very, very close tie to the bottom line. The more you can retain good talent, the better your bottom line. So if for any other reason, there is an economic benefit to retention.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And pay what we're paying employees, going back to transactional versus relational, pay might get them in the door, but it's the culture and their experience with your organization, with their manager, that's going to keep them there. Mm-hmm. And that piece just cannot be ignored.
Yeah. Well, I see a comment that just came in that says, it's really important for us to teach our middle managers and the other leader figures within the organization. This is not just about a business owner, right? This translates all the way through down to the other levels of the organization. And so it's really important for anyone who has people leadership responsibility to understand how this translates into the conversations they have, the work that they do, for us to teach our people leaders at every level, right? How to have coaching conversations as opposed to being more of this transactional, right? Here is the day-to-day work kind of management that some of us grew up under, and making sure that their job results are also tied into the people results as well.
And thank you for that comment. There's a resource out there that would be very helpful. It's called The Coaching Habit, and it's for managers to learn how to coach. It's actually can be used for anybody. I mean, you're actually, there's so many points in there about how to draw someone out, and it's just really good. So I think that's good.
Thanks. Yeah, Scott, maybe after the live stream, you can go back here and drop that resource into the comments so people will have access to that. Right. And thanks, Donald Scott Daniels, for your comment and for being here, being with us. Thank you for panel experts for showing your expertise and your knowledge and sharing such amazing advice. Thanks for everybody who's taking the time to be here live and to participate in this live panel. And if you have any questions and you're watching this, post-recording, drop them in the comments. I'm sure all the panel experts would love to hear any thoughts you have around what was discussed and any questions that you might have as well. Thank you very much for being here today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene.